Welcome back to the Seth Leibsohn Show. Delighted and privileged and honored to have our old friend, former regular guest, specifically throughout COVID, guest host several times of this show, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, now a candidate for U.S. Congress here in District 4 to take out Greg Stanton. I could say so much about this great man. Dr. Jasser, welcome back to the show. Thanks for being with us.
Well, thanks for having me, Seth. It's always great to be with you.
Great to be with you. People can follow him on Twitter X. We call it Twix around here, Dr. J. They can follow you there at Dr. Z for AZ, or they can go to your website, z4az.com. So much I want to talk to you about. Rashida Tlaib is supposed to be coming to, I guess ASU, District 4, where you're going to be, where Greg Stanton represents, tomorrow. And it just made me think, boy, wouldn't it be great to have you representing CD4 to be greeting her? Greg Stanton, he didn't even censure her, did he?
He didn't. He was not even one of the 22 Democrats that voted with the Republicans to censure her. And, if I were in Congress, not only would I have voted to censure her, but I would be reminding our constituents, reminding our district, our state, of the fact that our state-funded schools should not be tolerating organizations like SJP that's funding her trip, that is sponsoring it, that has basically called for recognition of October 7, which was a terror pogrom against the Jewish community of horrific proportions, over 1,400 dead. That organization that's sponsoring Rashida Tlaib called it a Palestinian resistance and effectively celebrated it. I mean, that not only is there no room in Congress for that, there's no room on our state campuses that we pay for that. And, your members of Congress should be speaking out about this, should be setting the standard of what we tolerate, what we don't, what is treason, what is not. And unfortunately, Greg Stanton is missing in action, and for all I know, he's sleeping somewhere in bed.
Gosh, Dr. Jasser, that is powerfully stated and well stated. You put on Twitter just a few minutes ago, quote, "It's long overdue for ASU and Michael Crow to decertify national SJP and SJP at ASU, whose glowing endorsement of October 7th and Hamas's terror pogrom makes them unfit for representation and organization in our state-funded schools. This is not complicated." Those are your words. That's right, it isn't. We have a statute on the books here, an anti-material support for terrorism statute in Arizona. It seems to me that if you are in league with and joining with and supporting terrorist activities and terrorist organizations, it should not be complicated to decertify them. In fact, perhaps even arrests should be made.
Yeah, arrests, because there were stones thrown at a hearing in which student representatives were trying to have a democratic process, and they had projectiles thrown at them because they would not hear a BDS resolution that calls for boycott, divestment, and sanctions, which already has been passed as state law that has no place in our schools because it calls for, again, the elimination of Israel. Other organizations that have been sponsoring Tlaib include the Council on American Islamic Relations. And I'll remind folks, not only is it the progeny of the Muslim Brotherhood legacy groups in the West, but in 2009, it's the board members of the Holy Land Foundation were convicted and are in prison still, I believe, for raising money for Hamas. And ultimately, that trial proved, despite CAIR's multiple lawsuit attempts to have that removed, that they are an unindicted co-conspirator in that trial, which made them basically part of the fundraising mechanism of that of Hamas in the West.
Yeah, I mean, as you put it, thank you for that recitation, too, and that reminder, because as you put it, this just shouldn't be that complicated. This shouldn't be that difficult. It shouldn't be that hard. This is a short segment. Do you have time for one more segment if I have to take a commercial break here in a minute, Dr. Jasser? Can I keep you just a little bit longer? Would that be a possibility?
Absolutely. No problem.
I appreciate it because, you're among everything else that you are, former Navy lieutenant commander, it's physician. You're a public intellectual and you've written a book, and I am just gobsmacked about the explosion we have seen in the last week and a half of college students, young people, saying they're now just reading bin Laden's open letter to America for the first time, and it's opening their eyes. And I just wondered if maybe when we come back from break, you might tell me what's going on with our young people. Why is bin Laden now their new hero? And what would your message be to them? Dr. Zuhdi Jasser and I will be right back. Follow him at Dr. Zuhdi Jasser or at DZ4AZ, Dr. Z4AZ, that's better, DRZ4AZ, or go to his website, z4az.com. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser and I'll be right back. Welcome back to the Seth Leibsohn Show. It's an honor to have Dr. Zuhdi Jasser with us, Jasser, candidate for Congress in Arizona's Congressional District 4, to take on and take out Greg Stanton. You can go to his website at z4az.com. You can follow him on Twitter, X, or Twix at Dr. Z-A-Z, D-R-Z-A-Z. Zuhdi, amongst all your other accolades and accomplishments, you have thought deeply and written copiously on issues having to do with American culture, patriotism, our youth. Over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, there's been an explosion of young college students on TikTok saying that they have now, for the first time, finally read bin Laden's Letter to America, the first one from 2002, and it's opened their eyes as if they have been blind and now they see. And I'm just wondering what the hell has happened to this country and what's going on with our youth. Why is that attractive all of a sudden to them? I have my own theses. I wonder what you think, and I wonder what you would say to them.
Yeah, I think the thesis is that this is not new. It's not a surprise. While our Navy, God bless them for all what they did, was worried about whether they threw him into the sea appropriately, it was Sharia compliant when he died. The rest of us were saying, do whatever you want with the body. He's a terrorist. At the end of the day, this guy's going to keep coming back. And same thing with Awlaki. I can't tell you how much testimony I gave to Congress telling them, don't worry about suppressing their writings. That's what they did. They wanted to remove videos and all these things, and that was important. We're like, listen, these guys operate the best, like bats in caves underneath ground, like we see with Hamas. These ideas flourish, and they're waiting for the right time. And the Marxist, neo-Marxist movement in the left that fed the destructions of our cities and our monuments and our businesses through COVID, and the Black Lives Matter movement that was led by anti-Semites and others have now unmoored us, unleashed basically the permission for the Islamists along with the neo-Marxists. And remember, the neo-Marxists did this classically with Che Guevara and so many other so-called revolutionaries who reveled in terrorism and reveled in destruction. And the worse, the better for their movement. Yeah. And this is exactly the way the Islamists operate. They're nihilists. They live for death so that they can, through nihilism, come back with their writings. And as the Tariq Mahenas of the world were in Boston giving his speeches while he served 17 years, they let him give speeches about how evil America was. My message at the time was to counter his ideas. The New York Times was saying, well, should we publish this or not? And I sent them a piece and ended up publishing it on my own because they wouldn't publish it. We need to have an offense against these ideas. Where's the conservative movement with an offense to tell our youth that there is no better nation than America for freedom and to defeat the ideas of theocracy? But we still are in defense, and with people that are asleep like Stanton and others, we're going to continue to lose miserably.
I have a follow-up on that, if I can, Dr. Jasser. Well said. The follow-up is that they do believe in certain things, these young kids. Yes, I agree. Politically, there's a lot of attraction to the anti-Americanism, and maybe the anti-Americanism is a strong medicine because youth tend to want to cling on to something, strong and something to fight for, and we don't do a very good job. In fact, we do a lousy job, an awful job of giving them reasons to fight for and believe in America. But bin Ladenism, it gives them something to believe in and fight for. But they believe in and fight for other things, too, like LGBTQ rights, like feminist rights, and things like that, some of which I agree with, some of which I don't. But they're marching for a movement that if they tried to speak on behalf of, at, say, I don't know, the Islamic University in Gaza or at Berzeit University in the West Bank, they'd be dead in a day. How do they reconcile this, or do they just not know anything about this, do you think?
I don't think that unfortunately, our schools are not teaching them critical thinking. We formed our Clarity Coalition, which people can see at claritycoalition.org, that includes a broad swath of liberals, feminists, gay rights activists, conservatives like myself and others. I helped build that, saying, listen, 80% of the battle for security in the West is about defeating neo-Marxists, this red-green axis, and we can do this whether we agree on certain domestic policies or not, but we're not going to have a country to defend unless we go on the offense. And we were saying, listen, they're infiltrating woke ideas into our academies, into our military academies, into our universities, and they've been on offense fueled by the Chinese Communist Party, Russia, and other entities that want to destroy us. And Israel's at the head of the spear. So where's our offense? Why aren't we infiltrating into the Palestinian communities, the need for an Arab Spring against Hamas? Never happened. Why are we infiltrating the best anti-nuclear program into Iran, which is supporting the women's movement and defeating the theocrats there? None of that. We've constantly been on defense, and most of our representatives that are, especially on the left, can't even articulate what this country they want to preserve in the country, the values that we share. So we're left basically unarmed and in a position of surrender.
We're talking to Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, candidate for Congress, Arizona's 4th Congressional District, currently held by Greg Stanton. You can follow him on Twitter X, Dr. Z4AZ, DRZ4AZ. Zuhdi, the thing that a lot of people, when they look at this larger geopolitical or larger geographic problem, look at Arizona, front lines on the border, the threat from the border, the gotaways, people being caught as being on our terrorism watch list. And it's a huge concern, and it's made all of America a border state in a sense. I just, with that concern, I just didn't think we also had to be concerned about our colleges. We're growing them here as much as we're importing them, aren't we?
Absolutely. And this is why, if you look at the ideologies that they're pushing out, it's like fighting drugs and drug use and in our teens and others. You can do as much as you want as far as banning things and trying to prevent it from getting into their hands. But unless you help them replace that need for narcotics with a sense of fulfillment, a sense of positive movement in their life for personal individual rights and creativity and entrepreneurship and all the things that we're supposed to be doing in our schools, we have no offense. So you can only defeat the vacuum that gets filled by radical Islam and radicalization by replacing that in our children with a sense of purpose and a sense of belief. Because I was not radicalized like Nidal Hassan was, who had a frighteningly similar background, because I would only die for America. I would never die for Islam or my faith. That's between a person and God. But I would only die for America because my kids could only be who they are because of the treasures of freedom that this country gives them that nowhere else can give them. And I think we're even better positioned than Europe, which is on life support, because they don't have the same idea that people, when they get here, become American by virtue of believing in our social contract. They are more language-based, race-based, and their democracies are much thinner as far as ideological basis. But we can't be hemorrhaging folks that in the millions are coming here to destroy us with no idea of the social contract. We need to allow people in that really buy into our social contract and prevent those who are neo-Marxist and don't share our ideas from coming in.
Well, I can't wait for you to be in Congress and on the House floor debating Rashida Tlaib and censoring her and maybe even putting forward a motion to expel her. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, Godspeed to you, sir. Thank you very much for everything.
Thanks for covering this, Seth. Appreciate it.
You betcha. Appreciate you. I'm Seth, and we'll be right back.